Medea Bavarella Chechik, and I am here today with my dear friend, colleague, and co-host Pamela Hettinger. And we do have a very special guest, and his name is Owen James. And Owen James is a medical intuitive, a psychotherapist, a natural medicine practitioner, and he's also a shaman. So welcome, Pamela. Welcome, Owen.
Thank you, Medea.
And today we're going to be continuing the series of transformative conversations on the what's can we hope for as the transforming, what can we look forward to as the new vision, as the new narrative that we are all birthing here as part of our own human evolution, the evolution of the species into love. What could we, the conversations on beyond the cultural traumas of the Me Too movement and the boy crisis, from woundedness to wholeness. And Pamela.
Yeah, and so for today, we are really sensing into this disconnect that's been existing for so long and still exists today between the masculine and feminine. And what do we feel might be the new story emerging for both men and women? And what has created this disconnect from true self for humans, both men and women?
And so we are really, Owen, you work with people all the time, and you do a lot of healing work. You do a lot of spiritual, transformative work, both individually and with groups, and in your own shamanic work. So I know that you've had a lot of, you have a lot of wisdom, and you have and a lot of deep knowledge that you have acquired after many years of doing this deep work. So we're really interested in finding out what is your perspective on these new possibilities that we want to, the healing that is happening, that we're inside of right now, and what could we hope for? Because when we focus, our intention is what coming next, then we contribute into the birthing of it. And that's what we're really here in this series of interviews. That's what really our focus and our inspiration or the interest is. It's like what's coming next.
Yeah.
So if we look back first, because we're always looking at, I use the word should. I mean, the ideal situation is to look at the cause. And if we can find the cause, and that's why people come to see me, because they've been to see all of the symptoms. They know their symptoms. The symptoms have been treated, but the symptoms don't cure the problem because it's not the cause. So if we look at one aspect of this cause, we have to go back, let's say 50 years. Okay, what happened 50 years ago? John Kennedy was murdered. And what does it mean to have John Kennedy murdered? It meant that, just for instance, when I traveled, I was 18 to Mexico. The Mexicans would say to me, our savior, our dream, our hope has been murdered. Because that's what he represented in the world. He represented the possibility of a change at a moral level.
Yes.
And the key here is a moral level, because the loss that we are experiencing in the world today is that there is no leadership that any boy or girl can look up to and say, here is something I want to aspire to. And who do we aspire to? The leader of a country, a president, the first lady. But what have we seen down the road? We have seen corruption. We have seen war for no purpose. We have seen Mrs. Ford at that time was addicted to alcohol and drugs and went into a rehab center. At least she was honest about it. but we see this collapse in a moral quality of life. And I see that as one of the causes of the enormous problem in certainly boys in the world, because boys look up to a president. They look up to senators, and what do we have today but all of this illicit behavior and sexual behavior, and there is no moral quality that one can look to. So that's one major ingredient that started over 50 years ago, 55 years ago. And I think that's still, we live in a world where we have crazy presidents, we have fascist presidents, and this is a collapse of who do I look up to. So now, can I look up to myself? Well, if I look up to myself, then I have to figure out a way that I'm not going to be brainwashed. But we're living in a society where brainwashing, called the New World Order, and the New World Order is not a conspiracy in terms of craziness. The New World Order is something that's talked about by the New World Order. And whether it's the Chancellor of Germany or the past President of the United States, Obama, each of them have used the words, and Cameron in England, the New World Order. Now, what is this New World Order? It is just that, a world order to change and manipulate the population of the world to think in a certain way. Now, how then, what you're talking about, what you're asking for, is how do we create freedom in ourselves?
Ultimately, yes.
Okay? And so when we don't have a moral code, but we have a pedantic, say in this world, a Christian right code, right? I mean, we're in the battle right now in the United States between a judge who is completely against abortion and has had illicit affairs. Okay, where is the moral code? See, and this is right through, of course, because we have President Trump and we have our, fellow here who's not very strong. He's not holding a moral code. He holds a code of somewhat weakness. So this is one aspect that I see is a problem. Okay, the other aspect is a very interesting one, because as you're talking about it, we're in a new age, what we call the Nova era, the new age. And we know the new age from the 60s. We were engaged in it certainly in Cazadero and Sonoma. Okay? This was the era of music breakthrough and medicine breakthrough. I'm not going to call it drugs, although Haight-Ashbury, it came as drugs. But those of us who didn't use it that way used it as medicines. Medicines open the mind, but you see, the governments got very afraid. So they closed all this down. The enormous research that was going on with LSD at that time in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, curing schizophrenia, curing depression. But that was all closed down. And now what's interesting is there's a fast track in the United States, because let's look at it. Depression, I had a young boy, 9 years of age. He came to me, mother brought him to me. He's dropped programs, he's doing poorly at school, and he's anxious. And the doctor put him on antidepressants at 9 years of age. The only thing wrong with this boy is he had childhood worms. And the worms create this problem in children. I find it often. Okay, but totally misdiagnosed. And here is a boy, one of billions of people who are on antidepressant drugs. Okay, so we have a very big picture here, which we're looking at, because we're seeing young people on antidepressant drugs. We're seeing the physical body with no attention because sports programs are dying, because kids are on their computer play Game Boy situations, and we're in broken homes. That's the other ingredient, right? This is your third ingredient here. So we have this loss of moral quality. We have a situation which is a new Nova era, new world happening. And we have depression. We have illness in our world that is epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
It's epidemic. And why is it epidemic? Well, there are lots of reasons, but one of them is the pharmaceutical industry wants it to be epidemic because it is money. So we're having this huge cloud, and the breakthrough is what you're talking about. Your program is about how do we break through into the truth. What is the truth that we're living in, and what is the propaganda? Because we also know that the CIA, FBI, and other government organizations have programs on the internet which puts out untruth to confuse people. We know this is true. Okay, they'll even tell you it's true. So we know it's true. So all of this is coming out to create confusion, which is part of the New World Order. This is not conspiracy or craziness. This is actually happening today, taking freedom away. We have whole companies who are now implanted their workers with implants in their wrist. This is happening today already. Okay, so if we look at this, how do we find the freedom that we're looking for? And that's one reason my wife and I do heart-opening workshops, because, and you're one of the people who brought that to me, Medea. See, you're one of the people who showed me what does it mean when your heart closes and your heart opens. And my experience is that most people's hearts are quite closed with very big heart walls. Sometimes they go out 350 feet, 100 meters, 120 meters of solid concrete sometimes. Okay, this is part of our world.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm just getting it right now. It's like a visual that part of the work that we're needing to do personally and collectively to transition, to help ourselves transition into the new, what's emerging, is really working with our heart. The healing has to be with our heart. The heart has to be open. And for the heart to be open, and for us to start into experiencing ourselves from our heart and starting to experience the world or see the world through the heart, it requires that we need to take, responsibility individually to heal what's blocking, like you're saying, the walls, what's blocking our heart walls. Would you say?
I would say that that's very true.
Yeah,
It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference when we look at, or a person looks at, how they are holding someone guilty. You did this to me. Okay, we often don't look at what I did to you, but we are really easy with judgment about what you did to me. And therefore, I hold a cord, like a chain around my neck. I hold this cord of this attachment to the person who I am saying, you did this to me. And somewhere I need retribution. And then it depends on the seriousness of the loss of the connection between the mother, father, and child. And the retribution comes then through a very aberrated child behavior pattern, which we see today with boys, with the article that you gave me, the video of boys, and we see only boys or men are the ones taking guns and shooting people at this point in time. Okay, and so we're dealing with this internal brain limbic system of isolation, loneliness, separation. Right? And this is part of the whole story again.
Yes.
So how do we then bring that heart opening into a new context within our world? It's not so easy, but it's happening. It's happening here on this program. It's happening all over the world. And it's happening with this new energy of the sacred medicines coming into people's lives. And this is something important also, because people are hungry for something, and they're not hungry for religion. They're hungry to open something in themselves, because that's the time we're in. We're in an opening. We're in a new era. And the new era is, just for reference, The new era started in 1878. So a group of men, very wise men and women, who came together and said, this is the end of the Kali Yuga era, which is the age of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So in this age of darkness, they also said, now we will have war.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look again at this fourth element here, which is this new age, we are at the very beginning of a cycle that goes 2,500 years or something. We're at the beginning of this cycle. It's very exciting. We're in the most exciting time in the history of mankind, actually, because we're at the beginning of a new cycle.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
See, and the light that's coming in, the blessingness that's coming in equals, I won't say that. I will say that the light coming in is more than the darkness, and the darkness is getting very worried. Okay, the darkness
That's
is
good
worried.
news. That's good
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, it's very good news. Just think the program that you're doing, the program of the internet where 1 million people come together and meditate for an hour, or 5 minutes even. I mean, this is powerful.
Very powerful, yeah.
The program of the truth about cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are millions of people now who are looking at an alternative to curing themselves through an honest and truthful means. This is very powerful.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I see that. I see it. I'm sure you see it too, Pamela.
Yeah.
I see it too.
I find it interesting also because, how could I say, the Mayans, for example, dating back to, well, before Christ. How could I say, their 9 years, the convergence of their two calendars, and so on and so forth, was the end of the underworld. And all that it did was bring light to that which has been in the underworld. And now we're living into the, how could I say, the repercussions of what we have been living with, and now trying to sort it out and bring it to light, for one, as well as to bring it into some form of equanimity for all, including the earth. Okay, and so much of this, it's like, I look at different stages in human development, such as, how could I say, 2 3-year-olds, a girl and a boy, both think they can be president, but by the time she's 5 and he's 5, she thinks she can't. Okay, and so we have that early childhood development that comes into play here historically, in terms of a system that is crumbling, that does not serve and support both men and women equally, and does not also address the concerns of Mother Nature and that which we need to be regenerative to, rather than deplete the resources that are available. So I'm looking at that element in terms of the man-woman relationship, in terms of, if I speak heart to you and you speak heart to me, okay, beyond our genders, okay, we then are looking at the wholeness, and how can we supersede all these geopolitical and circumstances that are going on, so we can affect these changes within our individual lives and our relationships, like standing up for, not standing up for villain, victim, and rescuer, as much as these are the challenges we have historically already. We know them.
So
what do we need to get clear about to take steps forward, and what are we trying to create here?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, it's like I'm seeing it, that it's like everything you said, Pamela, in the old, the structures, these systems, these ideologies, patterns, beliefs, that's what's really crumbling, Owen, right?
Oh yeah.
So that is what's crumbling. And in order for it to crumble, it has to come to the surface of our consciousness. We have to see it. We have to, take responsibility, respond to it more consciously, and with a clear intention as to what are we doing with the stuff that is coming up, that is
Where
old,
are we going?
that is painful, that is the old paradigm. What are we going to do with it? That's really the question, is like, what do we do? Because we all know that we're going through this transformation, this evolution, this transition. Oh, when you said, we are at the beginning of this new age. And so the transition that we're going through is, each one of us, is that we have no other choice, I feel, but to really look at our own personal darkness, or our own, false centers, so that then they can be healed. And how they can be healed, what I see it is through opening the heart, to softening the heart, allowing the light in the heart, and then bringing the light towards ourselves, like forgiveness, acceptance, and then forgiveness of whoever we think that we need to forgive. So, and then that's what you're saying. It's starting to see that we, like, focusing on our innocence, starting to see who we are underneath, beyond our woundedness, beyond our, our anger and all that stuff, in that woundedness, and starting to reach each other, starting to connect to each other at that level of more authentic, true self, authentic intimacy, into saying, you've done this, I've done this, and we're here to heal it. We're here to heal it because there is something bigger and more important that it's coming, which is the revelation, the awakening of the heart, of the true self.
Yeah. The other part of this I wanted to bring forward is that you certainly in as you were speaking of the heart and connection, Medea, certainly in the work that you do with people and their traumas that may have led them to addiction and so on and so forth. Some of the very new programs that I have witnessed that have been taking place have not been looking at people as addicted or looking at them as broken as much as disconnected.
That's
it. In other words, that connection to one themselves to begin with, and then healthy connections within their community and family and so on and so forth, if that can be had. Is part of it. It's like the kid sitting on the bench that sits alone and might have a traumatic childhood, and the kids are now going over and sitting with that person to make sure that they do not feel alone, or that they do not get a sense that they don't belong. And so these are, I'm seeing children reach out in this way, which is just phenomenal. I'm just like, yeah. And I'm also seeing people able to turn their addictions around by their learning new tools in how to connect with radical empathy to themselves as well as other people. And
so in other words, is like the main, and I like the main cause, or one of the main cause, which underneath everything, all the layers, is really the disconnect from our heart, from our soul, from our true, more authentic, identity, who we are. What would you like? What do you think of that, Owen? What is your?
I think it's very important, the work that we are slowly coming into. I'm working with someone presently who had a major breakdown. And it's taken me back to some of my foundation training in psychotherapy, which is the work of Eric Berne. Eric Berne created a process called transactional analysis, analyzing the transactions which happen in your family that cause you to create a situation where your child or your adult or the parent within you becomes very contaminated or very alone, or has to come out of oneself, depending on one's temperament, right? The melancholic may hide deep inside, but this choleric outward person may just come out with their eyes even like that, because they have lost the inner connection. And so what Eric Berne brought into this world, which is today, when I look at modern day psychotherapy, I see only a few basic foundations, and then everything is taken from it. I see Fritz Perls' work in Gestalt therapy. What are you feeling now? I see Carl Jung's work in dream analysis and looking at dreams, which sometimes is very complicated. like
Mm-hmm.
the Gestalt way of you become the dream. I am the door. I am the car.
Mm-hmm.
I own this dream for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this disconnect is extremely important when we look at each aspect of the parent, adult, child within ourself and how each one has been broken from the other. So the interesting thing about Eric Berne's work, the three circles, parent, adult, child. And when you put the three circles slightly into the adult, that adult can't think with a reality world. He thinks with a corrupted world.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on who they are and their temperament and how they approach the world and the other things that happen to them, depends on how aberrated that behavior becomes.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of ways today to deal with this kind of approach in our therapies. But if we look back and we see this basic approach to that break in the schizophrenic, which is often when they're 15, 16, 17, and something very dramatic happens in their family. And then what happens is they leave home. Either they're not accepted, whether it's a boy or girl, because I deal with many girls who left home at 14, 15, 18. Maybe they got pregnant. You're out. I mean, this insanity that happens in this world of ours. I woke up with this the other night. I said, oh, we're 7.5 billion people in the world. Is some of this erratic behavior? Because I was, here we are, I live in the country also. But when you go to the city, suddenly you're in masses of traffic and people. And I said, is this like a rat maze where you have so many people that you have aberrated behavior like any animal? When you put too many together, they change.
Cage.
I mean, it's just something that came up, is this something that's actually happening when you have so many people? And this, part of my life was in New York, 15 years in New York City. And basically, when you're in an apartment building, maybe you know one other person in that apartment building. And I hear from people with condos, with these 40-floor condos, that nobody knows each other.
Yeah.
I find this so peculiar.
Yeah, there's no neighborhood.
No, no neighborhood.
Exactly.
No, and there's isolated senses of community because people are not getting together and being a community per se. They're texting one another, so they're not interrelated. And my understanding is that's even impacting people's ability to make decisions. Technology is at this point in time. They're just scrolling makes a decision every time you go past something.
Yeah.
And then it comes to these major decisions in their life and they're dysfunctional.
And so what happens is that exactly there's a further disconnect.
Yeah, a further disconnect.
And relying and giving, relying on something external, on this technology and in a way it's like giving our possibility or potential or power to that.
Yeah.
And so we're further disconnecting from our own ability to go inside and to find the answers from within our own wisdom and practice doing that. And that's how we grow, and that's how we become, and identify ourselves as our unique selves, that we're here and that we are, that we are more than this, discovering, we're talking about this possibility. And so, yes, I'm very aware of that. And I sense that in my city here. How is, we live in the same city, Owen.
Owen, I wanted to bring back, because when you mentioned Kennedy, okay, and particularly what JFK represented at that point in time, which was a possibility for equality, freedom, and a new morality. Okay, he certainly was of the Catholic bent, as his whole family is, and so on and so forth. and the turnover that happened after that, and so many liberatory tides have come up in the last 50 years, that we're living in a time within just our lifetime, huge changes in ideologies, in isms, in all kinds of things are crumbling right now. And in terms of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be religious, or our socioeconomic systems are all crumbling as well. And ideologies are in battles, you know, the authoritarian or the inclusive, or both of those together. You know, it's like allowing each those, you know, it's like if we polarize ourselves further, let me put it that way, we're not going to get anywhere. You know, blaming the other, or how could I say, shaming another, or any marginalized group based on gender, age, or whatever it is they were specifically marginalized for. That marginalization, to me, around the world is a really, it's almost a thing that is inbred in us right from the get-go, in our parent in our parent-child relationships, where humanity and respect and empathy towards human beings and nature are not. Okay, and I see so much of that. It's like nature is a great teacher. Okay, and a huge creative source, but we also see the power of creativity being able to destroy as well. And we as human beings are right at the apex, to me, of choosing whether or not we're going to destroy ourselves,
Well,
or create a new world.
you just said it just before you used the word choosing. It came to me because even last night it just came really strongly that it is time right now we exercise our choices, or conscious choices, and focus on what it is that we want to be birthing personally and collectively, not just from our own whims, but from the deepest part of ourselves that we are sensing. They're tuning in, and we're sensing that it is also connected to the impulse that is out there in the field that is also informing everyone else. So there is an intelligence that is in the field, the greater field of life, that it is in nature, that is in the universe, and it is within us, because we are a reflection of the universe. And so this new, you know, the choice is what we want. What do we want? Not what's not working, not what is wrong, but starting to what we want and referring back to what is this deeper wisdom, this deeper knowledge, this deeper knowing that is connected to this intelligence, that it's making itself known, that it's waking us up and is helping us to evolve, so that we can, all of us, come together into seeing the vision together. Because the more of us come together and align with this vision of this new that we want to create, which is based more on the respect, you know, the loving, the truth, the honesty, the authenticity of who we are, and the goodness of the world, the light. And so, and it's really interesting because now there is this, when you said there is, you know, this is times of upheaval, and even you, Pamela, these are times where everything is coming because it's breaking up, and yet in this wreckage, there is already the seed, you know, of the new. And the new possibilities in the darkness, there's already the light there. So it's like starting to make that choice, that conscious choice, to wanting to know what that light is inside of us, wanting to align ourselves with that, and then wanting to bring it out into the world for us to experience it, for us to, you know, familiarize ourselves and say, wow, you know, this is what's possible, this is what it feels like, and this is, so yes, this is what I'm aligning myself with. And it requires that we that we need to look inside, you know, that we need to listen, and that we need to, so
I think one of the elements of looking inside is that we have created a number of paradigms from the old paradigm to try and create a new paradigm.
yes.
So when we look at the old paradigm, which is very present in the world, because if we look at this reality of the 80s, with the economic breakdown, the corruption of Wall Street, the movies that came out about the truth about Wall Street. So this is, of course, still going on. And the aspect here is if we look at these, if you look right now, the president of Turkey, because I spend time in Turkey because my wife is Turkish. So you look at the president there as a fascist, and he's in the United States right now talking with Donald Trump. There's a game, a big game, always going on in the world as we live here. Then we see Donald Trump. I'm not talking politics as such. I'm talking about how we create what you talked about, this middle zone, okay? So if we look at the other zone, which is Donald Trump is a distraction for the Koch brothers, who are multi-billionaires, who have set a new program for the United States on a conservative agenda. So people are all up in arms about, like in your forest, right? The pigs are running through the forest, but someone put the pigs there to get rid of people. I mean, whatever the metaphor is, you see, in this situation, Donald Trump is there to create a distraction. He does it so well. See, and then 2 months later, he changes his mind and something else happens. And
Squirrel.
you know, okay, and but the distraction works. You see, because over here you have a very powerful group of people who have an agenda, and so they need to cover up from the people watching television and all of the series that are new and so forth, so on. Right? Okay, so that is not creating a self-thinking. It is not creating an inner development as you're talking, but coming out of this distrust is a split, okay, a disconnect, because we have an enormous amount of people who believe in Donald Trump. Okay, we cannot ignore that. We have a huge amount of people who recognize that this is shenanigans, this is all craziness, and what am I going to do with it? And out of that is coming this third element of, I have to take some control here in my life in some way. I may vote for somebody else, but I have to wake up, because it's become so crazy that I can't just sit back and watch television all the time in hopelessness, because the hopelessness was very strong. I mean, millions of people were affected by losing their homes, losing their bank accounts, retirees who can't afford to live. A man here who's retired, and he's supposed to live on $600 a month. Well, you can't live on $600 a month.
No.
But this is common, okay? And we don't have housing for these people. So this is a breakdown in this time where, this is why I talk about again when people feel hopeless. I say, wait a minute. You are at the beginning of a new era, okay? I mean, go back to our youth, right? Pamela's and my youth, and it was the age of Aquarius, right? Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, opening up to ETs, the government said, yeah, tell people we have ETs, okay? So the movie ET came out, and that was that the United States government owns Hollywood. Okay, we have to recognize the government owns Hollywood, and when we want a war, we put out more movies, so to get everybody excited and so forth. This is a reality of our world, and if we tune into it, we see that something is also possible, because what comes to mind about women in our world, I don't mean Hillary Clinton running for president, because everyone knew that she was corrupt. That was unfortunate. I mean, it's been for years, her lawyer nature with her husband, unfortunately. But there was another thing on the radio 2 years ago or a year ago. There was a woman who was vice president of Bank of Montreal, and she said in an interview, there will never be a woman president of the Banks of Canada. 3 months later, the Royal Bank hired someone, not in the banking, but in the commercial world, who became president of the Royal Bank as a woman. I thought 3 months, that's not bad, right?
Mhm.
Something is different. Now we don't know, I don't know her background or what she is, but still a woman was put into this powerful position. So we know that there is a change. We know that our premier here said when the newspaper asked him, why do you have half women and half men in your inner group? And he looked at them and said, what do you think? This is 2017.
Right.
This is
Right.
not right. I have it because we're in an equality, and that's happening at some level. This is all very important to look at these small little steps that are occurring to give some hope in this crazy world of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Mm.
So Pamela, you have something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch base with you, speaking to gaslighting, which is a way of misrepresenting the truth, and triangulation that also is like, well, if you think this is true, then I'm going to send you over there, and I'm not responsible for this, so they are, and so on and so forth. That to me is what I call triangulation. In other words, if I just send it over there, nobody's going to know I did anything. And how pressing that is within the media, within all, how could I say, it's becoming even more prevalent within our education, within our communication, and so on and so forth, where people are not thinking and or doing any kind of background history, and really questioning the authorities that wrote that history. And I want to say it goes back to the Bible. In terms of what it is that is really truth to power here. Okay, to me, truth is not powerful, okay, as it is in the powerful power over and the powerlessness. It needs that little dance to play. Okay, when you stand in truth in a sweet spot between the two of them, empowered and to empower another, this is where I see us moving. Okay, we need to bridge this gap between that which has quote unquote grabbed all the power and that which is trying to come into power. And it's like, you know, if there's one person homeless, we've not solved it. If there's one person hungry, we've not solved it. And so there's reaching across and bridging these gaps in such tribal ideologies, and I have to say they're tribal, in that it has actually created cultural fractures, cultural traumas, and I believe all over the world we have some grief going on, we got some shame going on in terms of what we're living with, and we've got some deep healing as a society, as a world, to be doing, to internally and externally and relationally, and hopefully Mother Nature will let us stay here long enough to do some of this. But it's interesting. It's like, these are all the things to me that are compost of the world right now. It's like all of this crap is coming down, and excuse my French or whatever you want to call it, and it's regurgitating, it's regenerating something, and we need to till the soil to grow orchids, not potatoes.
And it's kind of like paradoxical, I think, what you're saying, that the new birth, the new sprouting, you know, we're doing it today, for example, and it's everywhere in the world. It is really coming out of the compost, isn't it?
It is.
So that's
Hopefully
where
we put
darkness,
nutrients in.
all the different metaphors, darkness, light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, and as we're coming close to the ending of this interview, and I just wanted to say that this is part of what is coming. You know, it's the what we focus on, also what we choose and what we focus on. It is the balance between having to focus on the compost, because it's through it's the compost that needs to be healed, because it's only through healing the compost that then what's underneath it can sprout and come out. This is the paradox, how the two are, you know, the yin and the yang, how the two are intertwined. And so it's kind of like, yes, you know, we look at the compost and that needs to be healed within us, within the collective, within humanity, and stay open to that. We stay, you know, vigilant. We learn skills to individually how to do that. And what's more important is that all of that is in service to this new life that is coming, you know, the light that is, who am I when I'm not the compost? What am I, you know, the new consciousness? What is the I am, you know, the who am I? So that true identity. So that's what, you know, that's where I, you know, as an ending for me, like one point that is really to focus on what is it that is, and sensing, you know, starting to listen into sensing from within. What is the new that wants to come, so that then we can support the new. Then we can all collaborate, and I personally support myself into what's, you know, into the new that is coming through me, and together all of us, we help each other, we support each other in doing that as well, because then that's how we come, you know, that's how we start connecting as the one body, one mind that is emerging. So that's, you know, as I wanted to say. So I'm going to invite both you, Pamela, and Owen, just as to close this beautiful,
to wrap it up.
This beautiful synergy that we have created among ourselves today.
I think what you're saying is that it's really important. Now, today I filled, with some help, 3 compost bins. Weeding the garden, creating new paths, and what went into the path was chipping and grinding branches from creating firewood to heat the house. Okay, so what's a metaphor here? The metaphor is next spring, if I don't empty the compost bins, we can't add anything more to them. So
exactly,
we have to really look at inside ourselves, and the word you used earlier, the word forgiveness. See, the word forgiveness is something in our Christ consciousness presence of this time, these 2,000 years, because each person has brought something, right? Buddha brought compassion into the world. Christ brought this idea of forgiveness. So we're not doing too good with this idea of forgiveness, because we have such a closed heart and painful situation we're living. But one way to empty the space is through forgiveness. And you've learned it, I've learned it, Pamela has learned it, that the key to clearing the stories, key to clearing these projections that I place onto someone or someone has placed onto me, this key of forgiveness. Even when we come to past life and someone has done something and they are cursed in that life for doing it, the key to it is, I forgive myself, please forgive me for what I did then, because look what I have done, or I have been very sick in my life, because curses usually always create illness and separation and business failure and bankruptcy and all kinds of losses. So if we look at clearing this, even back in history, 5 lifetimes, 10 lifetimes, this is all part of our collective. It's part of the trees that are in the background at Pamela's that have been growing for a very long time.
Mhm.
And even though a lot of them are cut down and most of those are second growth, because we had a big fire a few years ago, 13,000 acres burned, right? But that created new forests. I mean, I alone planted 13,000 trees.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
New growth, right? A new hope, a new possibility, because you had a clearing, you had an emptying, and that's nature.
Yes.
So how do we cooperate with nature to empty the pain that we carry in our heart? Because our heart and mind have to work together. And we've become this mind culture, information at not true information often, but information at a larger level changes everything. And just the information of clearing cords of attachment to someone, saying enough already because it's a chain around my neck, as I talked about before. Do you really want that chain around your neck? Because you're connected to that person. And you're saying, I hate that person, but you never leave them. You never forgive them for what they did without understanding what they did.
But that is so fundamental, and that's so beautiful, and that is so important. Owen.
Yeah.
I just want to add one little thing, because this is really very this is a very important point, is the forgiveness. And I also experienced this. There was a time in my life a few years ago where I really came face to face with having to, there was no other choice, either to die or to forgive myself. And of course I chose forgiveness. And actually you helped me with that, Owen, back then. And I remember what I did one night. I really said, okay, I am really willing to face everything that I think I've done that is so bad, that it's been holding me hostage. I want to face it. What have I done that I need to forgive myself for? And when I looked at everything one by one, because it was a time where I had no choice, I was looking at everything. What I asked myself, when I did this, when I made this mistake, because it was really nothing major, they were just mistakes, right, that I made because I did not know any better. I said, why did I make these mistakes? Or why did that person do this to me that I feel I need to forgive? Then I journeyed all the way down to the core, and at the core of myself. And then I was able to do with other people after that. I found my own innocence, that ultimately all the mistakes that I did, that I made, were because they were still coming from love. They were still coming from my deepest desire to wanted to create beautiful things in my life, good things. It's just that I did not know how to do it because I wasn't awakened, I wasn't evolved enough. And so when I saw that, then it was easy for me to forgive myself.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important to come to this place where we can say, the only choice I have really in my life is to let go of the past. And the way I let go of the past is I have to find this forgiveness. I have to let go and say, otherwise I'm dragging my past with me and I have no future except the past. And we're living, let me just add this one last thing before we close today, because the greatest thing we can come to is the understanding that, well, I could put it this way, although this person I talked to was very ill at the end of her session because her relationship with her seventh chakra is minus, minus, minus. Her relationship to God then is, and she immediately said, I don't believe in God. I said, okay, can you look at a flower and see the beauty of nature? Because this might help heal you. But the key really is to understand that we are living in the becoming of everything. This is a total different paradigm than thinking, oh, I live in the now. Well, the now doesn't exist either, even though it's made a lot of money for the writers of the book Now. See, now doesn't exist either because we've already passed the now. We're into the becoming of the total future of everything.
Yes.
And if we can touch upon that, even for a moment, it will change one's life. That moment of, I'm in the becoming. I'm not in the past. I'm not in the present. I'm not in the future. I'm in the action of this enormous creation, and I'm in it. My body is in it because my body is going through a chemical transformation. Every split nanosecond is changing. It's never the same. In fact, nothing is ever the same.
It's like, it's that being awake every time. Being awake in this moment.
Yes.
And then choosing with that intention and that desire and that conviction and that concentration. I love that word, concentration.
Yeah. And I'd like to touch on that you mentioned, Medea, and what you've mentioned, so that how could I say, there's a Native American tradition called the Great Giveover. And in that is standing in and holding space for that which is greater than we as these minute little human beings out here, that's bigger than us. Okay, whether that's extreme joy that you need to put out in the world, or whether that's extreme grief that one cannot, that feels so much bigger than us. And the importance of allowing that vulnerability within each of us as we transverse these and navigate the midwifing of this new world that is becoming, is very important. That we are just, how could I say, we cannot define it necessarily intellectually, but we know it's there. Okay, we cannot necessarily give voice to it in terms of verbal, but we know it's there and we know it's coming. So to us, as we close today, I'd like to just hold space for that which is trying to make itself known.
Aho.
Aho.
Yes. Oh.
So this has been.
So thank you.
It's been really. What's the word that I want to say when you put stuff into the compost? Like, it's been really fruitful. It's been really rich,
generative,
and rich,
yes,
and full of life and full of.
And thank you. Yeah.
And full of hope. And so I am very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the transformation through a new thought of paradigm, creating a new paradigm.
And I do hope and pray that this interview is going to be opening the heart and inspiring and allow the new sprouts to come into the heart of all those who are going to be watching the interview. So thank you, and till next time.